Pub battles, Brandywine. What I'm going to do to add a surprise factor is roll for the side that the British, that Cornwallis's column will appear on. 1 or 2 come up historically as he did, 3 or 4 here, 5 or 6 on the south side. One of the big differences is if they come on this side with the same side as Nafassan's advance force, they'll begin on turn 1. Otherwise, they begin on turn 4. That's a 5. So they'll be coming in on this side on turn 4. And I draw Cornwallis's chit. So here they come. Beginning on turn 4, as we do, we have some very interesting developments. The forward British dragoons have walked into a trap. However, Green was preparing for an attack from the north here. What he's done is sent half his force south, and the other half is crossing the Brandywine to cause some consternation in the woods. Now Nafassan, once he's heard some disturbance here, has begun attacking across the Brandywine here and here. The idea being that they will overwhelm the Americans, the colonial rebels, by hitting them from 2 different sides at once. Here, the detachment survives the initial exchange and then runs off. Here, the colonials drive back Ferguson's broadswordsmen, see if Grant can do any better. In a very successful defense, both British divisions are lost, and Maxwell's troops still hold the ford, although the militia have run off. Nafassan gets across to Grant's ford, although with losses. Losses the British don't want to have to take. Here, the dragoons are surrounded and destroyed. Over here in the casualty box, we see why, historically, Howe did not want to have to fight across the Brandywine. It has been a bloody exchange. This is turn 5. Remember, we started on turn 4 because the British came in from the side. Okay, Wayne comes rushing out of the woods like this. The actual combat looks like that. Now Green has sent 2 units in this direction. There's 1 unit here. Ordinarily, this unit could not move into combat with Grant, but this is Washington, the army commander. He can count as being in command. So essentially, Washington sees the Virginians and says, retake the bridge. Cornwallis is drawn and attempts to restore the situation. Now, as per the rules, these units, you saw how they were initially. Now Nafassan has moved. This is essentially treated as if they were all lined up. First round of combat destroys the rebels. They were followed by a detachment. They just simply melted into the woods. Wheaton's Virginians are driven back in disorder, but they do destroy Grant's troops. Looking at these casualties, only casualties you count for an army's morale is the number of infantry divisions. 4 and 2. The British came on with 11 infantry blocks. They've lost 4. They lose 2 more, they're broke. Colonists will have defeated the British army. Here the Americans are overwhelmed in the woods and they fall back. Now we begin turn 6. The rebels are definitely inflicting some serious damage on the British, but the British might be getting to the point where they're going to start maneuvering them out of their position. Turn 6 sees both commanders on either side of the Brandywine here don't really have the strength to attack across. Washington has Maxwell's Light. These are just a detachment in the woods. Here Ferguson is spent. These are 2 more detachments. Neither side can really cross here with any confidence. In the center, the Americans have put together kind of a fighting withdrawal, and the British are staying on this side of the swamp for the moment. They have cleared off the ford here, and they have secured the exit east of Dilworth. They have also unpacked their bags in the swamp, so they're protected from the cavalry, and this allows Sullivan's forces to recover and brings the militia back up to full strength. Can't quite reach Wheaton's Virginians there. Alright, favorable chit draw allows us to determine that the British have regained the initiative here. Up here, the planned rebel attack was foiled as the British forces slipped out and into the woods ahead of the combat. This is just going to be a brute battle here. Of course, we've got a successful flanking effort here. The colonists were able to do some damage, but they had to fall back into the swamps. And here the Americans are driven back in extreme disorganization. And the game ends on turn 7. As the British get the ideal end of turn chit draw and are able to move adjacent to the unpacked American baggage in the swamp. So, turn 7, British victory. which, by the way, serves them right, as the rules clearly state you cannot move cavalry or baggage trains into a marsh. Now I hid there because I went, okay, the cavalry can't get me in here, but conveniently forgot that, okay, if cavalry can't move through marsh, then heavy logger trains can't move through marsh either. It just makes sense. But in this case, the British are going to waive the violation and continue play and take their victory. Although in the best tradition of pub battles, this would be a situation where you sit back with your opponent, drink an ale, and discuss what kind of victory this was. The Americans are now going to have to race off in defeat, guaranteed, but the cost to the British is extreme. They lost their dragoons. Nefassen's corps was broken. Just like the historical battle, historians could still argue over this endlessly about who really won.